Azhar&Amir. Sorry we were absent for 1 week, but we've got Ian waiting in the lobby, and it's going to be a really exciting episode with some great CVs coming back. In the meantime, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll be answering as many as we can during the periods when we're not speaking to people. But without further ado, Ian, how you doing, my man?
He's just joining.
Oh yeah, there you go. Just connect to audio.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Hey Ian, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can't see me. Oh, hi there.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, lovely background.
Thank you.
Loving the background, man.
How are you?
Good. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad.
So to start off with, man, tell us a bit about what you've been up to and what like the goals are for you, like career-wise, for example.
Yeah, sure. So I've just finished my second year of university, and within my course, there's basically 2 placements that we have to do. And for my first placement, I did my placement at Accenture. Really enjoyed it there. Liked the but I wasn't quite as keen on the implementation side, so I think I want to get into strategy basically. So I'm just trying to create a CV to then hopefully like follow up on some internships over the summer. So I'm going to be applying over the summer. And as you might have seen, like my CV at the moment doesn't fit like the main like types of CVs that you've had in the past, especially it's 2 sides or 2 pages. I'm just trying to narrow it down to 1 page. And I was just wondering if you, basically I would really value an external opinion on which accomplishments stand out to you and which ones I should focus on. Basically, I have to get rid of some of my line items if you want. And I basically want to find out what seems the most impressive to you and which ones to focus on and which ones to maybe leave out, especially in that Accenture part of the CV.
Of course. So let's go straight into that. So I'll get that up. Yeah. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So what we'll do is, we'll just run through and let you know our thoughts.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, Amir, do you want to start or shall I?
Yeah, happy to start. So I think it's looking at mainly, I think it looks pretty good. You could probably actually shorten the margins. If you want more space, you can shorten the margins down, that kind of thing. Your grades are fantastic, as with the, the education or perfect. So I think when we get to the work experience, the one I was most impressed by, I think on here on an immediate basis is the Accenture one. My synthesis of the main takeaway when I looked at the CV was some things to me sound incredibly impressive, but the disparity of content is really big. Some stuff is like, this is amazing. Some stuff is like, okay, why is this here? So what I really like is 1 out of 5 students, that kind of quantifying. I like that you worked with in the strategy. One thing, just for example, right? You've quantified in some places, but when you said you won the 2019 new joiner case competition, I have no information about that. I didn't know how many people entered. I didn't know how competitive it was. That kind of info would be really good as to evaluate how impressive that kind of is, and how much kind of I should be valued. And again, when you say was well received by the client's MDs, what does that mean? What kind of, is there a way of quantifying that? Is there a way of kind of genuinely showing me the value that you as an individual have added, right? So when you said you received recognition, what did that look like? Was it a newsletter? Was it, by name, you out the 5 people on the team? What exactly was that personal contribution and really making that stand out? And Azhar, if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, so for me, actually, the Accenture is the most impressive part, as Amir mentioned as well. I think that's really good, man. What I would add to Amir is 2 things. So it's all about value and value perception. So, and sometimes you can do that through quantifying, and other times you can do that by, going A leads to B leads to C in terms of structure. So some places within which you can definitely cut down which aren't adding value, for example, is this sentence. So it's one of the best ways within which you can decide whether something's adding value or not is by thinking about, does it sound objectively impressive, or does it only sound impressive to someone who knows the context? And, to me reading that, I have no idea why it was complex or idea of any value that this created.
Yeah.
With your next sentence, it'd be really good, you know, if you mention, I don't know, like presented key like pipeline analysis of this, and this to client MDs, which then led to an implementation of X, you know, or which was a project that was fed into a new, like something else, like making it clear that if you're going to say it's well received, what was the action that occurred after these MDs saw it to show the value that you added. Same with here. So this isn't, I like this because, you know, you mentioned that you clearly are comfortable talking to senior management, but, you know, what was the value that you added in these escalation forums, or the changes that resulted as a part of you being there is quite important.
Great. It could just ask a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
So let's, like, if we would say that these were like 3 different work streams, with the first one being leading the client activation work stream, the second one being the data analysis and then presenting the findings, and then the third one being the leading the weekly escalation forums. If I would have to cut down on some of those, which ones stand out the most to you, basically, out of those 3?
I think the question is an interesting one. It's a question it's very hard for us to answer because we weren't there. But the answer is twofold. It's what Azhar hinted at. A, where did you give the most value? And B, which one of those can you explain in a way which conveys that value? Sometimes you do things which are incredibly impressive, but to an average person, it's very hard to understand why it's impressive. Like, I can make a new discovery in machine learning, for example, as part of my data analysis. But to explain to the layman why that discovery was genuinely a breakthrough is really difficult. So it's like the value, like ask yourself those 2 questions and then write about those ones. So you can either consider completely removing the complex data analysis line, or you remove other stuff and you put more time and effort into explaining that. And then I understand why the value added really was there.
Okay.
Yeah, completely to add to what Amir said, right? It's like, it's much less about one work stream having higher reputation than another one, or being more what they're looking for. And it's much more like what the result of that was. This line I would completely remove. But, you know, if you were to reposition that line and talk about how that data analysis actually, I don't know, led to some new implementations or led to client success going up as a result of finding like errors within the client database, that would be really much more impressive than it is right now. So what I would do is I'd really like, you know, like go through the CV and kind of like bold everything that you think needs to be like more deeply quantified, for example. As Amir mentioned, with the key achievements, you can talk about how competitive this was. You know, if you won it out of, you know, like 64 other different individuals, and then you talk a bit more about what that was, that'd be really impressive. If you are struggling, though, to quantify value in different places, then you might want to maybe remove it from the actual CV. So in its current state, I probably wouldn't include this, if that makes sense. But I might just put it down as, you know, like campus ambassador, for example, in your like right at the bottom, just as 3 words. If that makes sense.
Yeah, should we go on to some just on this other content as well? Because I think there are a few general comments to make in places. I think the one right at the bottom, I think, is a bit that can be said in terms of the activities and stuff. If you're looking to cut for space, as if you scroll down, like right to the bottom. Yeah, so in terms of additional skills and interests, like you might want to actually consider just making a lot of this with 1 line, because it isn't necessarily adding value in the same way. If you just have like hobbies, like, and just have like literally like number 1, comma, number 2, comma, and just literally 1 line, that kind of thing can be quite good. The fact that you speak multiple languages is important, and I think it's useful to have on there. And I remove references available upon request. As just quick little things. Azhar, do you want to scroll up a little bit? We can kind of, if there's any more general stuff.
Okay, so a few things I'd add. By the way, you do have, you know, sufficient experience to land, you know, a really good internship. So don't take this as, you know, us ripping.
No, this is good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So the biggest issue I see here isn't whether or not it's a page or a page and a half. It's that there's really good content then very generic content, and then really good content.
Mhm.
And it's about identifying the areas within which you are being generic.
Yeah.
So, for example, not everyone can say, you know, that they did this, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, that they generated, I don't know, like 200% ROI or, you know, whatever. But anyone can say they reported on progress to senior managers because it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Or, you know, developed a structured data set out of, you know, what does that mean? That
Yeah.
I have no way of, it's an entirely meaningless statement to someone
Yeah.
who's reading it, who doesn't know the context.
Yeah.
Same with this, like with your methods and processes, talk about exactly what you advised on. Maybe it was like, I don't know, like automation capabilities, and that actually led to saving 50 man hours over the course of a 6-week period.
Yeah.
You know, like, which actually saved the company an estimated, I don't know, like £22,000. Like, and then they're like, wow, this is really impressive.
Similar with, you know, devise an innovative method that led to an 80% increase in the scope of the project. That sounds like a template, like, because there's no information there that tells me anything about what actually took place, like, at all. I would love to know what that like, what the situation was, what the actual method was, and then there's tangible impact that it led to, if that makes sense. Like, that line, if you remove other stuff and expand upon that in a way which gives me information, would be incredibly impressive.
Yeah. Maybe just a quick question as well. So basically, after that was just like during high school, a summer job basically, and during that summer internship, off the back of that day, I then continued on a part-time basis basically.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you would keep that as a final line item? Because, like, I understand that's not as impressive as, like, for example, the grad job offered by Accenture. Do you think if I would basically have that in the same context for that job as well, that takes away from the value of Accenture, having it twice basically, and one being more valuable than the other? Or would you keep it? Is that making sense?
So are you saying, does it look bad if you have basically two job offers? Like,
yeah, but the second one was just on a part-time basis after high school, rather than like joining the analyst program.
I don't see why not. I don't believe so. I don't know if you disagree, but I don't see it as a problem.
Yeah, I don't see it as a problem at all, man. Like, I think there's like a framing of what is and is not important.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing here, in my opinion, is not that you cut your CV down, it's that every single line is adding really high value.
Yeah.
Because the reason why people only have 1-page CVs, right, is it's actually hard to have 2 pages worth of crazy achievements.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, a lot of this stuff is stuff that could be genuinely incredibly impressive. Like, this is a kind of thing where I think that if you actually talked about it, could be really, really powerful.
Yeah.
But in that format, it doesn't seem impressive.
Okay. Yeah.
Additionally, you know, this is something within which you've actually changed company process. But if you could only articulate and quantify the value of that, that might be a great line for you to have.
Yeah. And so like, I don't have any insight into that. So would you estimate, or would you just then stay away from it altogether?
I would estimate.
Okay.
Just really quickly, because I think we've run over by about 5 minutes. is same with a few of these lines, like, talk to me about the leadership skills that you learn as a result of, you know, leading this team. Maybe some of the projects that you worked on, because just saying that you led a team isn't something that impresses me necessarily. I want to know more about, you know, how good a leader you are.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally here, you know, like, how many partnerships or whatever did you secure?
Yeah.
What was your process like? How many
more than last year's?
Than last year? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Like, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remove a reference is available on request.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts, man?
Okay, not from my side. That was really helpful. Thank you.
I do want to say that you're, like, a lot of stuff you do is very, very impressive, and some of the lines on there, like, I know you're going to do incredibly, incredibly well, is what I want to say. And I think that it's just making, like, a couple of small tweaks here and there, but it's already clear to me from reading your CV that you're someone who has a lot of talent in you, and I know you're going to go very, very far, Ian.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day, man. And let me help at all.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Also, I'll just let Avni in. Yeah, she's been
Sure.
patiently
Just a quick reminder: if you have any questions, put them in the chat because we'll be answering them relatively soon.
Hi guys.
Hey, Avni. How are you doing?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Hey.
Yeah, we're great. Sorry about keeping you waiting because I know you were there for like a good 5 minutes or so.
That's totally fine.
Awesome. So how can we help you today? Or like, what are your goals? What are you aiming for?
So thank you for having me on, first of all. And I'll jump right into it. So I'm going to Singapore Management University for my master's in management. And basically my goal is either to specialize in marketing or sustainability. And the idea is to hopefully work in Singapore for a few years before coming back to India, if at all. So I want to understand how I can add that edge to my CV in terms of getting, the work permit there in Singapore, because I have heard it's pretty difficult to get it, especially because obviously each country wants to hire its own citizens. So I'm just wondering how I can sort of leverage my CV and upskill, if I can do anything at all in terms of that.
Yeah, perfect. So what we'll do then is let's hop straight into the CV before we go into it. So we'll probably have quite a lot to say. So again, don't take any of this as disheartening. More just like changes to help you.
Absolutely.
So if I just scroll down, give me 1 second. Let me just get this up.
Yeah, so as far as I understand, it's kind of like you get a good CV, then you kind of get a firm to sponsor your visa, and then maybe at a later point it becomes more permanent. As far as I'm aware, it kind of that is that crucial step to make that happen.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So I think when I look at the CV, essentially my biggest takeaway is there is too much information here that is not adding value about you. Too much, like a lot of it is superfluous and should be removed. But there are things in here which show that you are incredibly talented. It's just like I, as a person reading it, have to search for them, and that isn't what it should be. It should be all of the best information thrown at me in my face. So, for example, your status as being single should absolutely be removed. Stuff like the certificates you've done online should be taken off as well. Unless it was like a proper degree that you did or your high school. I think that kind of stuff should kind of be removed, and should basically be at most 2 or 3 things at the top of that. So keep the Calcutta University, remove the certificates, and keep the Indian high school certificate examination.
Yeah. And that'll shorten it already, really quickly, instantly they can see, wow, she's got really good grades. And, all of a sudden that education box is ticked.
Absolutely. So when I look at this kind of stuff, some things I think are amazing. Other things I'm like, okay, that just isn't that impressive to me. So what I love is the fact that you're a founder, but you're really not selling yourself at all. What I want to know is, how do you come up with this idea? What was the motivation? What was the impact that you had? How did you go at different challenges? Did you ever raise funding? Who important people did you speak to? Was there any kind of social media marketing that you did, because that's in your marketing, that kind of led to the uptake? How did you market yourself? You can link a lot of this to, because a lot of charity related stuff is related to how you get people on board, and that's obviously related to marketing. So basically what I want to know is, what did you do as a founder, and why is it the best thing in the world? Why is it incredibly impressive? That's what I want to know.
So I'll give you an example of that. So one thing I'd recommend is using bullet points. So I'm just going to pretend that I know what the last plastic is and invent some stuff, but you get an idea of the kind of bullet points I go for. So I would go launched a regional campaign which resulted in 20 different restaurants within the local area adopting steel straws. I don't know, and that kind of thing. Talking about how you've raised, I don't know, a certain amount of funding through like many different ways, or any like competitions that you've won that were competitive. Mentioning, if you have raised any kind of revenue, mentioning that and mentioning the growth of that revenue. If you haven't raised revenue, talk about your marketing campaigns and how you've been able to grow like the click-through rates on your websites, or, you know, like the number of people that are aware of you from like 200 to like 2,000, or all of those kind of things, and really quantifying, you know, the value that you add, because this is the thing that is going to be the biggest differentiator from anything else, honestly. Yeah. I hope that helps.
Yeah, in terms of the primary school teacher, or the voluntary teacher, unless there was something really impressive here, I'd probably put this near the bottom somewhere, like voluntary experience. Unless there was something here that you really added value, maybe you changed the system, like maybe there was something that you did really differently, or that changed the school in some way. But if not, I'd put to the bottom. In terms of marketing intern, here, this is your thing. You know, you want to go into marketing. This is, you know, your domain. But I am being told not really any information about why you're impressive or why you're unique as someone who wants to go into marketing. All you told me is you work part of a team and you analyze stuff to, you know, and increase output. It's unclear by how much the output is increased. So what I really want to know is, what did you do? What are your responsibilities? And what did you do personally that went above and beyond? And what impact did that have?
For example, again, I'm just going to make stuff up here. Optimize a company website to increase click-through rates from 24% to 63%, which resulted in, I don't know, a 47% increase in company profits selling the products through the website. Like, imagine that against being a more generic line. They can be like, wow, this person can do the exact role that we're looking for. So really think, you know, about quantifying that value. Additionally, you might be like, talk about like a new campaign that you launched, like a new product that you specifically were marketing, and how that did, how that improved like time on time, any innovation that you did as a result of while you're within that team, and the benefit that it had. If you're going to talk about increasing output, let me know what kinds of output and how much you increase them by in a measurable way. The magic to every CV, it's just my personal opinion, generally speaking, is not about having 10 experiences. It's about having like 3 experiences that are really good, that you go into a lot of detail about, you know, 4 bullet points each, and then you chuck everything else in your additional achievements and your awards. All right. So for me, you know, the last plastic definitely should be there. The voluntary teacher should probably be in like additional achievements, for example, and not in under experience. This, it really depends, because I don't know how much value you added. So if it's something that's really impressive, I keep it in there. Straw Withdraw, is that the company that basically became the last plastic, or?
Sort of. I was doing that with a friend of mine, but we sort of parted ways, and then I started doing something entirely on my own. It was in the similar sector, but completely different from the initial venture.
In which case, you know, it might be worth including that as well, because I think, you know, it's like another venture, right?
Yes.
Again, I think a lot of the ICC Prudential Life, I think, is quite impressive to me in terms of what it is. It's just talking about, if you're going to talk about you and analyzing, you know, different data, I want to know more about the value that data provided. You know, what were the changes that you directly suggested? And then talk about, you know, what the CHRO implemented, because then that's kind of things that are really, really impressive to me. So I think after this call, bullet pointing all the different things you did and asking yourself, so what, and what is the value, is something really important to do here.
Yeah, so what is kind of, you make a statement and I ask you, so what? Why do I care about this? What is the impact? Why does it matter? Yeah, essentially, why should I care?
So I'll show you exactly how this works. So okay, I'll do this with Amir. And Amir, just keep asking so what until I've shown you the value. Okay. So I'll go through the exact example that I've already gone into. So in terms of, you know, the last plastic. So I'm a campaign that is, you know, shifting towards sustainable, efficient lifestyles. He'll be like, so what? And then I'm like, okay, so what I actually do is I encourage restaurants to become more sustainable by switching to steel straws. Again, is so what? And eventually you get to it being, I've implemented across 24 different restaurants with plans to implement across another 50. And right now, we have like saved this much money for these restaurants, or like this many tons or this many units have been saved that would otherwise have been, cutlery, for example.
Right.
Yeah, and the ultimate so what for the person reading it is, well, so what? The answer is you're an incredibly talented leader who would therefore make a fantastic employee. And that's the ultimate. So, that final link is made by them, but you have to make every single link up to that point kind of very clear.
Yeah. We'll do a few more quickly in the interest of time. With your, so two things. So with your skills and abilities, one thing that I always say is you only ever want to include technical skills in your CV.
Right.
So you never want to mention that, you're really good at presentations or leadership, public speaking, any of these things effectively. With all of these things, you kind of want them to realize that for themselves. So they realize
the key is to show and don't tell.
Exactly. So they realize you're an incredible leader because you talk about how you led a team of, I don't know, X many people towards a certain thing, or that you're a great public speaker because you've, spoken to 200 people, for example. All of those kind of things. But so show, don't tell. But I would obviously showcase these skills because I think it's important, especially for the different roles you're applying for. And same with the languages, I think is important. And lastly, the thing I'd add is I would generally reduce a lot of these significantly because I think they take a lot of space on your CV. You have to think about whether these achievements and activities would be very impressive to the people reading them. So you telling me that you're a volunteer teacher is impressive, but me hearing more about the certificates is not impressive. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of the same in terms of a lot of these quizzes, for example, or one-time seminars. Generally speaking, if you want to include it as an award or recognition, it should be either like something like a competitive process that was hard, that you personally achieved, or it should be, like a long-standing thing that you do. So if you're a volunteer teacher over 4 weeks, I want to hear about that. If you've won like an academic award, I want to hear about that. But all other achievements I would filter out personally. Yeah. What are your thoughts? Because we've been talking at you nonstop for like 10 minutes. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. So I already had a couple of these things in mind, but I think you guys just reaffirmed my faith in what I have to change, because the CV was not made by me and I was really confused about, it was made by professionals. So I was kind of stumped as to, is this a new ATS format, or I wasn't in the right headspace, but I understand that now. Quickly, another question. I heard from a lot of my seniors in SMU that internships are not counted as work experience in Singapore, especially because I didn't work in Singapore at all. I've had all my internships in India. So any suggestions for that, how to maneuver around that?
So this is an area that myself and Amir don't actually have knowledge of, because I didn't know about the Singapore internships. The first thing I would do is I would talk to someone within Singapore. So find someone, who might actually know the answer to that question, who is working in Singapore. Additionally, look very specifically if you can find the actual like lines that state this, because is it like internships at firms don't count? Because even then your foundership and all of that would still count. So it's basically identifying exactly how to position based on what the line is. Amir?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I generally agree. I think find someone who has true expertise in this area. Often people who are older than you will say a lot of things that you get, people who claim to be gurus don't actually know what they're talking about. Ask someone on LinkedIn, message like 10 people, one will reply to you. Try and message people who already have jobs, not people who are just in your uni who are older than you, people who actually have been in Singapore or went or worked for a few firms, and seek 2 or 3 different opinions as well. And because different cultures will have different norms, and you have to find those out by people who live and experience that culture.
Yeah, and lastly, big thing I'd say is if you take this advice on, in terms of how to structure all of that, you will have a really good CV really quickly because, you do have really good experiences. There are a lot of people pretending to be gurus that are not. So generally speaking, look at the expertise of the person giving you advice before you take it on, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good luck and reach out if you need anything.
Definitely be wary of people who have done things that are impressive, but don't necessarily know how. A lot of people who have made achievements as well, but it's unclear how they got there because they were just talented, but there's that level of introspection as to what did I do in order to get this achievement, if you know what I mean. So just because someone's done something doesn't necessarily mean it, but you could often filter that out by seeking 2 or 3 people's different advice.
Thank you so much, guys.
No worries. I hope you have a fantastic day.
You too.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Azhar, do we have our next guest in? Or?
We do. So let's do the questions after this one.
Yeah, if you have any questions, do put them in the chat and we'll answer all of them at the end.
Yeah. So I'm just going to let Komal in. Second. I think Avni's internet just frozen, so she'll be leaving shortly.
Hey, can you hear us?
Hi, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
That's nice.
Yeah, so Komal, tell us a bit about yourself. I've got a lot of questions already from reading your CV, so give me.
Okay, so I'm actually a student here at the University of Manchester right now. Very soon would be graduating, and that is why I want to start doing things and be attractive as an international student to the employers here. That's my major concern because I have been applying to a lot of places, part-time jobs, internships, some random companies I don't even know of, and I haven't heard back from anyone, not even one. And I don't know what's the reason, where am I going wrong? And at times I think it is because they don't know the companies I have worked for, because those are not that big names like for them. But of course in Pakistan, like I'm a very strong candidate. But here I'm not able to make a mark, and that's where I'm struggling the most. And secondly, I wanted to understand how I could optimize my previous work experience, which is in core marketing, and now this degree, which is like totally different. It's innovation management and entrepreneurship, to step in any business related graduate roles, particularly. I also like consulting, but I've been reading about it and it just seems like very challenging. So I'm not sure if I want to go for that. But I do want an employer who can sponsor me and it fits well with my career goals. Yeah. And I'm not able to fit my resume anywhere right now.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Amir, what are your quick thoughts?
Some really interesting stuff. I think that essentially what you might be suffering from is the fact that you have actually worked in Pakistan before, but when you come here and you're applying for graduate roles, you seem like your CV will stand out as a bit of a sore thumb because you don't have the typical experiences of a graduate, and therefore it's kind of like, well, do I, is this, how do your average employer kind of weigh those up? So is it kind of like a lot of grad roles you've been applying to specifically?
No, I do intend to after September onwards. Right now, I'll just look at internship part-time. If there is a role in, let's say, Singapore that I think I can be a good candidate for, so I just apply. But I was
big companies generally.
These are companies, yeah, but not graduate programs. So lateral roles, I would say.
Okay.
That makes sense. Okay, so before we go to the CV, I'll just give you a couple of my quick thoughts. Right. So I've looked through your CV, and if you look nervous. If I'm talking purely based on talent and achievements, you have one of the top 3 CVs that we've seen on the show. Honestly, it's incredibly powerful. You as an individual seem incredibly capable. but I think that there's a lot that could be done in terms of rewording and reframing a lot of your achievements to sound impressive. If I'm an employer, I don't actually care where you've worked personally, but I want to very, very quickly, when I read that, be like, okay, wow, she'd be great for this job, you know, like, and people can be impressive in small companies, big companies, companies you've never heard of. It's more about impact. I need to see instantaneous impact. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by going through your CV right now.
Okay.
So if I just, right, there you are.
Yeah.
Perfect. So in the interest of, just like giving you as much to go off as possible after the call, I'm just gonna run through some things really quickly with Amir.
Yeah.
So the first one in terms of your formatting is I would change it slightly.
Okay.
So the first one is I would have your education always at the top.
Okay.
Additionally, normally you want your titles to be bigger than your body text.
Okay.
So I would do that. And additionally, I think some good spacing, because for me, when I look at this, I go, she's done whatever she can to get it on one page.
Because I struggle. I mean, I've worked for 2 more companies. You can see that on my LinkedIn, but I can't put it here because then I would have to reduce everything. So I was told that for a good CV, it should be 1 page.
Yeah, it's good to get your CV under 1 page, but I think you should focus more on ensuring that we cut some of the stuff or reduce the wording down.
Okay.
So you have fewer bullet points, but always keep the formatting good. So a couple of really quick things.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest way within which you can improve the CV is to reduce the amount of things that are descriptive / contextual versus the things within which I can immediately see value from. So what I mean by that, if I read this, right, it tells me the role that you did, but it doesn't tell me why you're great, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But if I read this, it tells me why you're great. Yeah? I read this and I'm like, wow, she's incredible at sales. So if you went, for example, I brought in $45,000 worth of revenue within the first 2 quarters of 2018, which is a yearly increase from 93% to 181% compared to the average salesperson of this amount. I'm like, wow, right? So always think about the value element, because here you've taken up 3 lines, but you haven't told me the value that's been added.
Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, completely. I understand. I mean, that's a very valid point.
Awesome. Really quickly as well, before I hand over to Amir, a lot of this stuff is, again, you explaining to me the role itself.
Yes.
So, you're telling me, what you did, etc. You're telling me that it was a difference from the fleet image, but I much more care about what you did, if that makes sense. So if you repositioned this in the industry, tell me about what value that brought in and exactly how you repositioned it.
Okay.
You get what I mean? So I would probably completely remove a lot of this.
Yeah. But what I was thinking when I wrote this was that I was able to do this with the support of this design overhaul and the 360 marketing campaign. So how do I make it more substantial?
So go on a minute.
So, I mean, essentially, in my opinion, the reason why it's like this is because for someone looking from the outside, it's very hard to tell what the 360 marketing campaign is about, and kind of why this is different and what is the kind of personal impact that you're having. And I think that either it's worth spending more time kind of briefly explaining it and then saying in which I did X, Y, Z, which was unique, or the first, or something like that.
Yeah, so I can explain the mediums I used, if that is what you mean.
So why don't we really quickly, for this specific bullet point, you actually explain what you did?
So basically what happens is when you reposition a brand, so you start off with looking at data. So I have done that. I didn't include that. So I went and worked with Nielsen, got the data. Once I got the data, I realized where exactly I have to pinpoint, sat with my agency, got the strategy redeveloped, worked on it, then planned a marketing plan for it, got the budget approved, executed it, took 1 year to execute it, using all the platforms which marketing includes, radio, television, billboards, magazines, everything you can think of. That includes these.
Okay, I've a really big thing to say then. You're not telling me any of that here, and that's incredibly impressive. So I'm just gonna, this is something I like doing. I just make stuff up in terms of, I pretend that I've done what you've done to give you an understanding of how you want to position it. So I would talk about how I would specifically mention how you created like a very bespoke like plan, like a plan, a strategy plan, strategy roadmap, which you presented to senior management and got it approved. I mentioned how much you got approved. I think that's really impressive. Okay. And then I would mention that you led a year-long implementation, which and here you might even want multiple bullet points because this is super interesting, right? You tell me how you increase the click-through rate of the website because you did that on the website. You can talk about the number of additional sales that were made as a result of this campaign. You can tell me how you did in comparison to other brands or the year-on-year awareness. If there's any way within which you can quantify how the television branding or the media branding or the radio branding was beneficial, I want to hear that in like a percentage or a number, and that will impress me so much. But right now,
I have those. Yeah, that is the reason I got the award where I have this like prestigious Pakistan Advertisers Society Award.
Yeah, national award, right?
It's a national award.
Impressive. But right now, I don't know what 360 marketing campaign means.
I understand, yeah.
I don't necessarily care that it's a family vehicle or about this part. And this doesn't really showcase how impressive what you've just told me is. If that makes sense?
It does.
So I think obviously we don't have time to go into each line by line.
Yeah, I understand.
But exactly the same thing with a lot of these. You haven't quantified these. Never assume that they understand exactly what you're talking about. Okay. If you're talking about negotiation and approval, I want to hear who you negotiated with, what the deals were, and what the value was.
Okay.
Again, same with here. You told me the role, but you haven't told me, exactly the value. Again, this is a good one. This is a really good one. Okay. With both of these, I would recommend you slightly change around the wording. So I might, instead of going manage critical transition, I might change it to increased, something like increase the percentage of customers switching over to, our model by 40% by launching and executing a countrywide training program, which increased product knowledge amongst 1,500 dealer staff and brought in X amount of revenue, Okay. If you don't know the revenue, estimate the revenue based on the customer switching. Same thing with here, like increase volume growth by X amount by doing this instead of the other way around. Yeah. So yeah, I think again, like your experiences are so impressive. It's just about using the ABC value formula.
Okay.
And I'd love to, because me and Amir are also in the tech space. So tell us about this, please, because we're super interested.
So basically, this was my startup. I started this in 2017, and this was basically me trying to give back to the society, because when I was a student, I faced a lot of problems because of the cultural aspect of how Pakistan is. So I was not allowed to leave my house after a certain time and go and study at coaching centers. And that's why I realized this was something that was needed. I developed a platform with a few interns, got incubated at Nest.io, which is an incubator by Google for entrepreneurs in Karachi.
Wow.
Worked there for 4 months, then UK for UK government actually had a program which is no more there. It actually sponsored us for 4 months. This was again more like incubation, mentorship, and things like those. Then things went on, and we developed a lot of tutor base. Like this is 250, but now I have more than these. But I faced other problems, especially when it came to customer acquisitions. But I was lucky to at least have customers from different countries, because they were willing to give me money, unlike Pakistanis who were not comfortable with the idea of paying for girls' educations. So I gave up on the startup. I'm not working on it anymore. But in those 3 years, I achieved all of that you see there. I was also a part of a fellowship. I went to Silicon Valley for 1 month. But a
Wow.
lot I used to meet, I don't know, 6 or 8 people per day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also offered seed funding, but then that was not carried on for other reasons. But I was offered. She was a Silicon Valley investor. That is why I wrote that I directed the company through a potential seed funding. And now, recently, I was also selected for Founders of the Future Fellows here in the
Yeah,
US.
yeah, we know who they are.
The reason I did that was because I think that I have gained significant experience in this space, and I want to do something in the future.
Mhm.
Maybe continue with this, but in different countries, or just give up and work on a different idea altogether.
Okay,
But
so
I do want to be a co-founder of something.
hmm yeah, I understand that. I think I'd be interested to hear about your experiences more. So I think at some point in the next like month, let's set up a call, because
Definitely.
we're in the same space.
Okay.
I think this is really impressive. Same thing that I mentioned before, rewording, switch it about, because you always want to capture the reader's attention instantly. So if you tell me, so if I change this, because I think you're explaining here versus demonstrating. So if I developed an edtech platform that is now serving over X many customers across 4 different countries, and managed the tutor acquisition pipeline, increasing our tutor base from X amount to X amount in this period of time to make us competitive in a highly saturated online tutoring space. I'm like, wow, right? But do you see I'm changing the wording around?
It's the same thing done differently, and more. It has more impact, definitely.
Same with here. Like talk about raised over £50,000 in investment in a seed investment round from Silicon Valley, completing 2 different incubation cycles, and then when you get to interview, be like, hey, like that's what happened. Yeah, so that's the biggest thing that I would mention. I think this is really good because you haven't gone overboard and gone on for too long with this stuff, especially because you personally want to keep it to 1 page. So takeaways, just very, very clear takeaways. Education, take that to the top. Remove anything within which you are being vague, or consider how you can change it to be the value.
Okay.
Figure out what the most impressive thing is in each sentence and bring that right to the front. So in this sentence, it's the volume growth. In this sentence, it's the customer switching. In a lot of these sentences, you want to reword them entirely to talk about the value you brought. And then you have a very strong application. And message me on LinkedIn and we'll figure out a time to chat as well.
Definitely, yes.
Awesome.
Do I need to have a summary on my resume?
In your case, I suggest no.
Okay.
Yeah, good question though. Reason why I don't think you need a summary is because you can, I believe, keep this to 1 page quite easily after you implement some of the changes. And because all of your experiences speak for themselves, you don't need a summary.
Okay. And if I am to apply for different roles, do I need to reword stuff again, or do you think this can go for business development, consulting, and sales? I'm actually exploring the kind of areas I could work in because my degree is very different, and I don't know if it's valuable in Pakistan, but I understand people here are fine with diversified degrees. And definitely I see myself not being able to enter marketing again because of the degree. So I don't know.
That's not necessarily true. Yeah.
I mean, in the UK, generally, it doesn't really matter what degree you've done, and if you lead with the management, that will be fine. And I think that you may wish to change the order of things around for certain careers, but generally, it shouldn't really matter. The question I ask myself is, do I demonstrate the big skill sets for this career? So, for example, if you want to go into consulting, I would really highlight the leadership and startup experience, and maybe because the dates of the second and third one kind of match up a little bit, so maybe you can shift them around. So I'd probably have that second. So those are the only changes I would generally make. As long as you're displaying the main skills required, it's okay, I'd say.
And the one thing to add to that, obviously we don't have too much time, but I think it's a question that everyone asks at some point is, how do you tailor your resume? Tailoring your resume is not a quick fix. It actually takes quite a long time. So what you do is you look through you identify all the companies that you really want to apply to. Everywhere else, just send off your standard resume. Don't bother tailoring. The ones you really want to apply to, look through their role descriptions and look for what they're looking for. So I'm not applying for roles right now, obviously, because I'm focusing on my startup. But if I was, I need to highlight that I'm a good fit for the job. So if I'm applying for a sales role, I'm really, really going to highlight, all the sales experience I have, the deals I've closed, my close rates, my ROI, right? I might even change some of my other experiences to focus on that. But if I'm applying for, I don't know, marketing role, I'm going to talk about my online sales. I'm going to talk about my click-through rates instead of my funnels, and ROI from my campaigns. And if I were applying for like a product management role, I'd get rid of all of that. And I would talk more about, the development cycle speed at which I built things, or my how I reduced errors in the database, and I improved customer engagement rates and traffic. So it's very easy. Just consider, for the roles you really want, do your skills and your CV align to them. Just because you do that degree doesn't mean you can't go into marketing. Okay. Generally speaking, if your experiences match any role, you can go into that unless they tell you expressly not. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I actually had an impression, but you're right. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah. Really, really happy to have you on the show, because I think you asked a lot of really important questions that probably helped a lot of people out. And drop me that message and we'll figure some time out.
Definitely. I mean, whatever you guys said made a lot of sense. So yeah, thank you for all those advices, and good luck with your startup.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
So I think just before we close up Azhar, we've got a couple of questions in the chat. So let's go through those, and then if you do have any, please put them now, because we'll be answering them in this last 10 minutes or so. So Isa has asked, what are your thoughts on CV cover letter doctors, in inverted commas, that charge often hefty fees to create a tailored document for clients? Necessarily worth it, or is it just overhyped advertising?
That is a great question. And I think it's ironic as well, because I guess me and Amir would fall under those CV doctors, right? The fact that we're doing this in the first place. In terms of that, I think a couple of things you need to strongly be considered before you go for anyone is, have they proven in some capacity that they're actually good at it? So not just have they managed to land a big role, right? Because loads of people land big roles off the back of their talent, but there's no reason to suggest that they can help someone else do it. So previously, I don't do this anymore because of time constraints, but I used to offer those CV reviews. And, these would, take me ages. Hence why I don't do them anymore. But, like 4 or 5 hours. But anyone who was coming for them would already know that I'm able to do what I'm able to do, because I have clear case studies of people I've gone to top firms, for example, or you can view these videos. So very important to consider, is the CV doctor or whoever there's these clinics proven that they can demonstrate it in a way that you can believe?
The other thing I'd say is there are arguments why you might want to use them. I think there are good reasons and very, very bad reasons. I think the best thing you do is learn yourself. Like if you're entirely unsure and you want to see what the changes might be, and maybe a one-time thing could be useful. Generally, though, you don't want somebody else to do the work for you, because the process of doing the work makes you learn, and it makes you able to actually create it for yourself. So if you ever want to change careers, do something different, you don't have to keep going back to them. the other thing I'd kind of say is that actually, if they want to do it properly, they have to spend a lot of time with you personally. As you saw in the show today, there were a lot of times when the text didn't quite represent the true achievement of the individual. Like, I actually have to speak to you in quite a lot of detail to ascertain what it is you properly did, you genuinely did, so that I can write it in an impressive way. Often, because your experiences are your own, you are the only person who can sell them unless somebody else really gets into that detail. So it could be worth it in summary, but I personally wouldn't. Or what I would do is ask people who've done it before and get example CVs and kind of compare myself to them.
Like, someone can sort your formatting out and your spelling errors and a few wording changes instantly. But if you're looking to really have a standout application, chances are they need to talk to you quite a lot, and you need to be very involved in that process. So I'd be very, very skeptical of people that are promising that they can do that in a very, very short period of time.
Yeah. Also, Isis also asked a further question. What language would you use in your conclusion and intro for a cover letter when applying to an internship?
What language?
Yeah. What is I'm not sure exactly what's meant here by language. Do you mean like tone, like wording, like what? Or is it kind of like is it kind of the approach you're going for? Do you want to seem really impressive, or what kind of what's the kind of any thoughts just generally? Answers probably.
Yeah, so generally I think you want to go in demonstrating your interest is obviously naturally very key, but also explaining and showing, also demonstrating how your interest goes into action and not just into basic interest. Like, if I'm applying for a banking firm, for example, as a first year, and I talk about how I really find some of the strategies fascinating, and I've done an online simulator, for example, if I take that one step further and I talk about some kind of project that me and my friends have set up to run simulations using some form of AI, now that really demonstrates that I've gone above and beyond and I'm genuinely interested. So try and demonstrate in some way that you have interest that is translated into action or some kind of project, as opposed to just basic interest. Yeah, that's the first piece of advice I give.
They replied, "Oh, how would you phrase the language or wording?" I think it's kind of what you've gone into generally, like there, Azhar. Do you have any comments like the tone you'd go for potentially?
I think this will vary by company, and it's a case of naturally there will be what you want to convey, right? So I would suggest writing this out before you ever even try and make it into a letter. But why are you interested? Why you as a person? How have you demonstrated that you'd be good at the role, for example? And those are the three main things in my opinion. Then think about how you want to come across. Do you want to come across really passionate? Do you really want to come across really, effective in your methods? It's incredibly important to think about exactly how you want to come across. So for me, I usually come across for like a sales role, like very results oriented and very, very driven and entrepreneurial. But again, different roles will want you to show different things. And I think it's important to consider what they are.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you everyone for tuning into this week's episode of Steer with Azhar&Amir. We'll indeed be back next week. And if you want to come on the show itself, please send us a DM on LinkedIn, and we'll try to feature as many people as possible. Hope you have a fantastic day, and take care, guys.
Have a great weekend. Bye.